This conference will now be recorded.
So hello everyone and welcome to our April webinar on performance through intermittent fasting with Dr. Sher Bovay. Let me first introduce Dr. Bovay to all of you. Dr. Bovay has been helping her patients achieve remarkable weight loss and health results through her innovative personalized programs based on the most up-to-date insights and research. She's a graduate of Queen's University, a chiropractor by training, and has developed an expertise in lifestyle medicine, primarily focusing on weight loss, stress, and sleep management. Dr. Bovay has over 25 years of clinical experience and is certified through the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine at Harvard Medical School. She is a sought-after speaker on topics ranging from performance management through to healthy living for companies, and is a lecturer in the Department of Medicine at University of Toronto. She's our guest speaker for today, and thank you to Dr. Bovay and to everyone who's here with us today. Now I'm going to give you the presenter role, Dr. Bovay, so you can start your presentation.
Great, thank you.
Oh, before I do that, please everyone mute your lines, and Dr. Bovay will be taking all your questions at the end. So please keep them at the end. Type them in the chat box at the bottom of your screens, and we will take it from there. I will read them to Dr. Bovay at the end, and she will be able to answer all your questions.
Beautiful, thank you. You can see my screen okay there?
Yes, we do.
Great, okay, perfect. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time today out of your days, midday, to listen to my talk. The longer version of the title is Strengthen Your Mind, Body, and Performance Through Intermittent Fasting. You already have heard about my background, so I won't bore you with any more details there. What I'd like to, what we're going to talk about today, just quick summary so you know what we're in for, is first, what is intermittent fasting? What are the benefits? You know, the benefits physically, the benefits mentally, from a performance and productivity standpoint, and behaviorally, which might surprise you, but I'll get into that one towards the end. And then we're going to touch on how-to tips, like some tips around intermittent fasting, a bit of who should do it, who shouldn't. So as Maha said, the focus in my practice is more around weight loss. So generally my clients look a little happier than this little guy on the scale. But I just like to bring this, talk about this briefly, because this was my introduction to intermittent fasting. As I said, I've been working in the field of lifestyle medicine with a focus on weight loss well over 10 years now. But I actually ran into my own challenges about 6 years ago for a variety of reasons. I had put on weight and was doing all the right stuff to lose the weight, and it was not coming off, despite being, quote, an expert, and which was unbelievably frustrating and, quite frankly, a little embarrassing professionally. But anyways, so one of the things, I was at a conference, and this is when I was first introduced to the concept of intermittent fasting. And this was down in the US, and this was, as I say, about 5-6 years ago. And so once I understood more about it and the impact it could have, health benefits, overall benefits, but obviously I was highly motivated because of my weight loss issues. That was my intro to it. I learned about it and then decided to follow a certain set of protocols to lose weight. So just to give you an idea, this is a picture of me, and this is what happened over 6 weeks. So in a very short period of time, lost the weight, 20 pounds. And you can see the inches, so particularly really target the central core fats, like in the hip, chest, and waist area. But as well, I measure metabolism in my practice, so for people that come to see me. So my metabolism was steady, I had a high energy level, brain power was unbelievable, and also the other part of it is have kept it off and was back in control. So it's not just a short-term fix. So this is obviously very much a focus on the weight loss side of it, and there are other benefits, but I just want to give you an idea of how I discovered this and the fact that it is such so many health benefits, but from a weight loss standpoint, it is very powerful on many levels. If anybody's interested, on my website, which is just my name, drsherbovay.com, I actually have a 6-week video blog. Again, this is from 5 years ago, where I did videos once a week talking about sort of the good, bad, and the ugly of my experience as I was on the program. Anyway, so since then, this is what I have implemented within my practice, and it's very effective for people that yo-yoed or people that were really stuck and the usual stuff wasn't working. So what is the deal with, with intermittent fasting? And want to give you, I'm going to back it up a bit, just give you a little background here to set the stage. So first of all, if you think of the body as like a hybrid car, where a hybrid car has two sources of fuel, right? We have gasoline and we have electricity, two separate sources. And what's required to tap into those sources are very different. Well, likewise, your body has also two sources of fuel available to it. One is from food, the very first one. So obviously that's typically how we live our life, right? You eat food, it gets broken down, it increases blood glucose levels. The glucose is sort of the gasoline for the cells, so to speak. And but we also have another source of fuel, and you'll see the second one here. It's like fat for fuel. And so this is when now fat is broken down, and that produces ketones. So ketones become the fuel source for the cells. And this is like what happens is I'll explain a bit how intermittent fasting impacts this, but basically what we're doing is we're shifting from using food for fuel to using fat for fuel. And the results are, number one, from a weight loss standpoint, you can lose a lot more weight and keep it off because it's your primary source of fuel when you're doing some intermittent fasting when done properly, as opposed to typical weight loss where if you're using food for fuel, you shouldn't lose weight that quickly. That 20 pounds in 6 weeks would be way too much. You'd gain it all back. But fat for fuel, definitely, it's very effective. And there's a lot of other benefits, which we'll touch on. And the reason, I always like to give context around this too, because when you think about it, we are, as a species, hunter-gatherers. And so we are designed from an evolutionary standpoint to withstand periods of time when obviously there's food around, but also potentially within reason, periods of time where there isn't food. And so when food is not available, that's when the brain, which will recognize the signals for that, will shift gears, and then it will start to kind of we'll say, right, we need fuel, we need fat for fuel. And when that happens, that gives us, in a very primitive example, it's going to give us fuel so we can get out and hunt and survive. And in our modern day world, we don't need that, thankfully, but we rely on food for fuel. But just so you know, this is a natural state, fat for fuel. It's just we don't need it in our modern world. So looking at that, how does intermittent fasting come into play here? Well, what happens is when you do some intermittent fasting, first of all, once you've gone past 16 hours with no food, and that capital IF there stands for intermittent fasting, once you've gone past 16 hours, that's the signal. That's part of the signal that's going to trigger that part of the brain. So, right, we've used up our blood glucose. We've used up our stored glucose. Now what? We need fuel or we will die. We need to get out and hunt and gather. So we need energy to do that. So that's a signal to the brain. And then the other part of that is because insulin, which is the hormone, which is the gatekeeper of all this, it's very low. So when it's low, then that's a signal for the brain to then upregulate the enzymes to start burning fat. It's like a toggle switch. It's like, okay, we're switching fuel systems. It's like you're going to plug in the hybrid car. We're going to use a different system now. And that's sort of how intermittent fasting, in a very sort of basic explanation, but that's what can be part of the thing that will help your brain switch gears and switch your physiology. And as I said, this supports the hunter-gatherer mode so that we have the fuel so we can get out and hunt and gather so we survive. Again, very primitive example, but that is, that's how we're designed. Now, obviously what you eat will make a difference, but this is called ketosis. I don't know if you've ever heard any of that used, but ketosis means body's using ketones for fuel. And if somebody's overweight, then obviously the advantage is they can use their body fat. That's why people can lose so much weight. But there are people that will actually, and I have many clients that continue to do some form of intermittent fasting because of all the other benefits, which I'm going to get into. And if somebody wants to stay in ketosis, the other option is they can also do it using a higher fat ketogenic diet is another way, but that's where you're supplying the body with food fat from fat as opposed to body fat. So why do we want to use, what's the whole excitement about this? What's the big deal, right, about using ketones aside from weight loss? So just briefly, again, weight loss, obviously you can burn a lot of fat. The other advantage is it protects your muscle, keeps your metabolism high, because the big fear of losing weight quickly, right, you're going to gain it back. That is true if you're using food for fuel. But when you're using your body fat, it doesn't happen because we have to keep the muscles, you have to stay strong. You need your metabolism to be stimulated so you can get out and hunt and gather. So the result is it's very sustainable weight loss, and you're just generally going to be stronger, which seems a bit paradoxical, right? Eating less often, you think you're going to not have energy, be starving and all that. In fact, the opposite happens when done properly. Now, let's look at some of the other benefits, though, from aside from weight loss. So first, one of the big ones, and this is always surprises people, is that the first part being increased energy. Again, people think, oh, if I'm eating less, aren't I going to be tired all the time? In fact, the opposite happens. You have an increase in energy. And this is because, first of all, if you're using your body fat for fuel, you have a lot of energy. You're not relying on food, so you're not going to have that lull, that afternoon lull because you're hungry or something of that nature. Your body doesn't have fuel. Also, when you're doing intermittent fasting, it really helps to regulate blood sugar levels, so you're not getting those crazy swings up and down, right? Crashes, then the desire is there to eat something starchy or sweet, and sugar increases, and you go on this roller coaster ride. Well, this way it stabilizes all that, so there's increased energy. And as I said, a lot of my clients are very surprised at that. But at a cellular level, what happens, without getting too techie here or into the nitty gritty of science, but basically when you're fasting, your body produces more, they're called mitochondria in the cell. And they're like your energy, they're like the furnace for the cell. So at a cellular level, your cells are producing more energy. So that certainly helps, with obviously feeling much better. But also again, at a cellular level, it has sort of, I'll call it a cellular health or anti-aging benefit. And the point here I have is about it being cellular spring cleaning. Because literally what happens when your body's not busy, digesting food, and the liver's not busy doing what it has to do when you're eating, it actually changes gears, goes into like a spring cleanup for the cells, stimulates the immune system, you start getting rid of damaged cells, which is always better for us, because damaged cells become sick cells, and that means, potentially it can be precancerous cells. So you want to get rid of those damaged cells. But also we have, it stimulates stem cells to produce new healthy cells. So you're getting rid of damaged cells, you're producing new healthy cells. So this in and of itself definitely is the definition of anti-aging, but in a very healthy way. And I just put a side note here that, with mentioned about the cancer cells, because certainly, obviously, having more damaged cells, you run the risk of them becoming cancerous. But on a side note, cancer cells can only use glucose for fuel. They can't use ketones, whereas healthy cells can use both ketones or glucose. So when people are doing intermittent fasting, potentially ketogenic diet, these types of things, they're actually starving their cancer cells. And it's actually becoming part of cancer treatments now. They're starting to bring this into, pre-chemotherapy or pre-radiation. They find the results are better. So that's just kind of on a side note about that. So it just shows you at a cellular level how healthy it is. And even from an anti-aging standpoint, more from a look standpoint, a lot of my clients even have had people say to them, even partway through, they'll say, what are you doing? Like, you look 10 years younger. So it's not just because they've lost weight, but there's this, skin cells reproduce very quickly. So it's like they kind of get this glow. They look really healthy. So that's at a cellular level what's happening here. And that's why a lot of clients, one of the reasons some of my clients find they continue to do some form of it because they feel good, they have lots of energy, and they feel they look better. Now, one of the other benefits, and this is a huge one, is the impact on the brain. I have here mental clarity and memory, because the brain cells can actually use ketones for fuel. And when the brain cells are using ketones, it stimulates the brain to produce what's called BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's a lot of words to put on a slide, so I just use the short form. But that and it's interesting, some people genetically don't produce as much of the BDNF. But when you have more of the BDNF in your brain, you're sharper. It wakes up the brain. The cells are functioning better. This means that executive functioning, cognitive ability, all that kind of stuff, you're just sharper. That improves. A lot of my clients, including myself, I felt it was no more brain fog. So people find, and this is within a very short period of time, by integrating intermittent fasting and obviously eating well when they do eat, brain fog goes away. And again, on a more of a health standpoint, it's been shown for brain health that they're actually starting to use intermittent fasting and getting the body to use ketones for fuel that actually has an impact in a good way for people that have early stages of Alzheimer's. They're actually starting to name Alzheimer's, different reason Alzheimer's can come about, but for more metabolic reasons, they're calling it type 4 diabetes now. So by giving your brain a break from just using glucose for fuel, it's good for brain health. Again, it can help prevent Alzheimer's in some cases. And it's been shown to reverse some of there's a whole program in the US on this. So it's a pretty exciting area of research. Again, another reason that having this, whether not even for weight loss purpose, but just generally integrating some form of intermittent fasting for your brain is really good. Now, the other one I have here is about performance and productivity. And this is really kind of summarizing, drawing from the previous two slides. So, I mean, first of all, as I said, you have increased energy. So from a performance productivity standpoint, I'm sure you can agree, if you have more energy, are you not going to be more productive in the day? You're going to perform at a higher level. Likewise, as I mentioned about the brain part of it and cognitive function, it's, as I said, most people find that they are sharper. They're thinking more clearly, their memory's good. So again, between the increased energy and increased brain power you have, without a doubt, performance and productivity increases. This is probably one of the biggest reasons, aside from weight loss, that people of my clients like to continue to do some form of intermittent fasting. It's because that they find, and they'll say it time and time again, I still do it, I feel it, I am most productive when my body, for the most part, is in a fasting state. And again, it's so contrarian to what you'd expect. It seems paradoxical, particularly when we're caught in that, oh, if I don't eat, I'm going to have brain fog. I can't think clearly. And when you're relying on glucose for fuel, yes, that's what's going to happen. You need to keep feeding the engine. But when you switch into this using fat for fuel, it just wakes the brain up, and you can just get on with your day and be very productive. Also, quite frankly, you're not spending as much time planning and prepping and whatnot in the kitchen with food, trying to figure out your healthy snacks and your healthy lunch and dinners and all that kind of stuff, because you only, well, depending on how one does intermittent fasting, you're not eating as often. Most people, it's not breakfast, so they're just up and out the door and carry on, which is very interesting to see. The other side of this, and this relates a little more indirectly to performance and productivity, but one of the areas I find most interesting is the fact that the impact that intermittent fasting has on improving the relationship with food. And for some people, they might think, oh, what does that mean? For others that have had challenges and they know that, if you think of it, it's more they know they're not making healthy choices all the time, or they're struggling with weight, or they have a history of yo-yoing with weight, or not even weight related, they just know they should be eating better and they're having a hard time with that. They feel like they're not in the driver's seat, that something else is driving the cravings or their desires for turning to certain foods, even though they know better. Um, well, that's where intermittent fasting, I would say, without a doubt, much more so than how I used to practice with nutrition, more the traditional approach of eating every 3 hours or so and using food for fuel. This has the biggest impact. And I'm going to give you an example. A client of mine, she's an entrepreneur. She was working from home, at, so right next to her kitchen. And so when I was working with her on her weight loss, she was doing the program, and she would notice during times when she was during a fasting period, she'd be working away and she'd think, oh, I'm going to go get some food now. And then she'd stop and go, actually, no, I can't eat right now. I have to hold off a few more hours. And so in this dialogue with her, I would say, well, were you actually physically hungry, or was your attention on food? And what she noticed, she wasn't even hungry. It was just, why is she going in the kitchen to get food after all? And so in her case, she was, her awareness increased, as she became more mindful about what was happening, she realized she was using food. She was using it to procrastinate. Things she had to do work-wise that she didn't feel like doing, or it was intimidating, or it was boring, and it was like, I'm going to use food first. And without a doubt, having that time period with no food, it really highlights those patterns. And she came up with the best quote. I just want to share it with you here. She said, she goes, Dr. Sher, I discovered I'm no longer hungry for food. I'm hungry for success in my business. I thought that was quite brilliant. Well said. And so just briefly on this, again, it's making that distinction between real hunger versus more of a conditioned hunger. I wouldn't even use the word hunger there. I call it more conditioned desire for food. It's probably not hunger. So, these are typical things, right? People using food for stress, food for reward, boredom, procrastination. Like, what is it that you maybe use food for? Food is very powerful. And when we're in those states where we're, be it negative or positive, but we're in a state where we're looking to deal with a feeling, and we've conditioned ourselves to use food, well, having a period of time of no food really brings that to the forefront. And then you have an opportunity to be mindful about this and say, right, maybe I should find a different way of rewarding myself. Maybe I should find a different way of dealing with my stress. And so this is where I spend a lot of time working with people, particularly with people they've had repetitive challenges with weight and have yo-yoed. It's often these are the underlying things. It's that relationship with food. So being able to bring that to the forefront, become mindful of it, and then develop the strategies on dealing with the real underlying issue, that it's just generally going to be healthier. It also obviously is going to help somebody, if it's a weight loss issue, lose weight or keep the weight off, but just generally being more fulfilled as opposed to using food. Even yesterday, I was sharing with Maha before I had a client, and yesterday she's actually a medical doctor, and she said, yeah, because I realized I'm really using food at the end of the day. I'm disconnected from my values. I'm not treating patients so I want to because, I'm so busy and all that kind of stuff. And so when we get disconnected from what's important to us, and rather than filling our day with value-driven activities as much as possible, then we can't do that. We get pulled down into this sense of dissatisfaction, and the tendency, one of the things can be to use food for that immediate gratification. So as part of the coaching aspect of my program is dealing, and I love this part of it actually, more so than talking about the nutrition, quite frankly, is this part of it. And I also use a technique. I just have NET here. It's a neuroemotional technique. It's a mind-body technique to help get at that as well. So again, mindfulness versus mindlessness. That's where intermittent fasting, I think, really brings that to the forefront. So, just briefly, how to do intermittent fasting. I mean, first of all, if you're pregnant, breastfeeding, you shouldn't do it. You're on, sometimes certain medications, one have to be taken with food, so you should check with your medical doctor. Even, people that are any significant illnesses, they should check first with the health issues, should be checking with their medical doctor before doing this, or at least do it under supervision. So But when doing that, so there's two different ways. One is doing the timing fast, which is spreading time out. So this is like you do 16 hours of no eating. So typically that'd be like, for example, no breakfast. You finish dinner, whatever, finish eating 7-ish at night or so. And then you can have lunch at 11 or 12. That would be 16 hours. And then you can eat 2 meals, a lunch and a dinner, as an example. Or it's a 20/4 hour fast, 20 hours of fasting. And then you eat, some people would eat once a day. And then there's a 24-hour fast, so from dinner to dinner. Again, you can work up to that. The first few times you do it, you may not feel like great mentally, but eventually it does. Your body will become fat adaptive, and you'll feel better. There's also doing caloric fasts, and this is called a very low calorie diet. That's what the VLCD. Generally, the most you're going to do with this is 2 days in a week. That's the 5 and 2, and that's just having such a low caloric intake that you're not providing your body with enough fuel. You're still eating enough to supply your body with the proteins it needs for cells and micronutrients, but from a fueling standpoint, that very low level, that's a signal, another signal to the brain to kind of switch over to fat burn. In my program itself, I have a 4-phase system. It's with loading, losing, locking in, and live well. It's a combination of timing and caloric. Loading is fat loading, losing is a combination of the timing plus the very low calorie. People take a couple of supplements to support that. And then locking in is transitioning from being in full ketosis for a period of time. It's actually a 10-week program. Losing phase is 6 weeks. Locking in is 4 weeks, but that's to transition you from full ketosis back to using food for fuel, which is how you're going to live your life, and doing it in such a way that the new body set point has locked in. So that's in terms of my actual program, the differences. But there's different ways of doing this. And the beautiful thing with intermittent fasting, you can apply it to any ideally healthy diet. But if somebody's vegan or vegetarian, they can do it. If somebody's ketogenic, if somebody's paleo, just somebody's eating a basic kind of typical North American diet, as long as it's healthy food, they can apply intermittent fasting. I always like to make the distinction here. I'll just finish off on this note that, when the word breakfast, people think, oh, but isn't breakfast the most important meal of the day? Yes, it is. But if you break that word apart, it's when you break your fast. It is the most important meal. It sets the tone for your metabolism, your blood sugar levels, and everything. But nobody said it had to be in the morning. It's just the first meal of the day. It's when you break your fast. So that's the what we've gone over, right? What it is, some of the benefits. You can see it's physically, mentally, performance-wise, behaviorally, and a few tips on how to do it. And the doctor that I said was coaching yesterday, she said to me after our discussion, debriefing some of her challenges, she goes, so in other words, she goes, I need to feed my soul, not my stomach. So I thought that was a very interesting kind of way of seeing it. Anyway, so if you want more information, I mean, the website's just my name. There's my email. I also have a Facebook page. And we have a few minutes, I think. So if there's any questions that have come up.
Yes, I have 2 questions here. The first question is from, first of all, thank you very much. It's fantastic. But let me ask the first question. Nicolina says, can you drink anything other than water, obviously, during the 16 hours, for example, coffee?
Yes, you can have coffee. Do you know the number of people that ask me that? It's pretty funny. Myself included, I never would have done it if I couldn't have my coffee. Yes, you can have coffee, you can have tea, you can have water. I was also drink broth, which is very, chicken broth, beef broth, vegetable broth. That's particularly handy when people are getting into more extended fasts. Yes, you can. So ideally, though, with no dairy and no sweetener.
Can cream be a good replacement for dairy?
It depends on how one is doing it. Like my own program is also anti-inflammatory, so we do take dairy out. If you're following more ketogenic, people will. If you're going to do a dairy, it's better to do high fat, because then you're still following the flow of providing fat for fuel, but you're just giving your body a little extra. And of course, it's going to depend if the goal is weight loss versus just being in ketosis, right?
Okay. Another question from Joanne, is 16 hours of fasting the magic number? Why? Is there a range, say 12 to 16 hours fast?
Yeah, that's interesting because in the research it's a bit sort of there is a bit of a range, but generally the rule of thumb is 16 hours. It's always going to depend a little bit on each person, right? We're going to have genetic variations, how quickly their body gets into fasting, into a ketosis state. Um, so, and it also will depend a little bit on how long they want to, like if their body after 12 hours, 12 to 13 hours gets into ketosis, it's just getting in. Well, you want to have a few hours of that. That's why the 16 hours of
Okay,
fasting.
okay. Uh,
Mhm.
Nicolina says, yes, coffee is my addiction. Uh, Holly is saying, so on the 16-4, what times should you eat and what to eat?
Okay, so did she mean because there's 20, 4, and 16 and 8. So if it's a
So
16 and 8,
meant 16 and 8. Yes, she
yeah,
said
that's right. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So with that, so typically, right, you would do if you did 8 dinners, sort of 7-ish at night, 6, 7 in there, then 16 hours later would bring you to 11-ish for lunch. If that's a bit early, I mean, you really it's just listening to your body. You may find the first few times you do it, 16 hour, you know, you 11 and like you're really hungry because your body is not used to it yet. You might need to eat a bit earlier. But what happens, and again, my clients are always surprised, like sometimes almost to the point they'll even forget almost about lunch, which shocks them, you know, after a week or so, they're like, wow, I thought I'd be starving all the time. Because actually intermittent fasting suppresses the appetite. So you want to eat that 8 hour window. I mean, it might end up, it's really, you're eating 6 hours. Like if you ate lunch at noon and you had dinner at 6, well, technically you're eating in a 6 hour window and doing a slightly longer fast, which is okay. You can do it that way.
okay. Amelia is asking, how do you gradually get into intermittent fasting?
Yeah, I mean, gradually, I wouldn't like hit it with a 24-hour fast right off the bat. You could, but you know, it's going to depend. You might not feel so good, and if you're prone to being hypoglycemic, meaning blood sugar levels drop a bit low, it could be a bit too much too soon. So I mean, the easiest is starting with either no breakfast, and then so it's just getting through the morning, and after you've done that, I mean, and the question is, you know, do you want to do it every day or just a few days a week? So you could do it every day, or you could just do it a few days, and then that would start to get easier as it goes along. So if you're doing that, and then you think, okay, well that's pretty easy. You know what? I think I could bump it and maybe eat, go right through till 3, and I'll have a healthy snack and then I'll have my dinner. So then you're eating in that 4 hour window. So that's the 20 and slash 4 hour method. So you can start slowly so that your body, because what you're training your body, you're waking up this fat burning system, which is dormant. But what happens is it wakes up, it becomes more efficient. The term is called being fat adaptive. Well, then as that happens and you're feeling good, lots of energy, then you can start to you know, lengthen the fasting period, shorten the feeding. Sounds like cattle. The feeding period. Sorry.
Okay, Joan is asking, what is bulletproof coffee? I hear this is something you can drink during fasting.
Yes, so that gets into, remember the one of the slides I talked about using that ketogenic. So it depends on what one's goals are, right? So if somebody is doing fasting with the idea of they want to burn body fat, then you don't really need to do the bulletproof coffee in the morning. What the bulletproof coffee is basically coffee, and then you put fats in it. So often people will do butter and then MCT oil or coconut oil. Well, what you're doing is you're supplying your body. You're still not giving it food. You're not increasing blood glucose levels. So the body's still in ketosis, but now you're supplying it with some fat that it will use for energy in the morning. So if somebody wants to do this with more just because they like ketosis, they like the feeling, it's good for them, not so interested in losing weight, then they feel they need more, particularly if they don't have much body fat, then they feel they might need more energy, but they want to get it from fat. That's where you can do like a bulletproof coffee in the morning. So you're supplying extra fat, that's fuel, but you're staying in ketosis. That's when people why people would typically do it.
Okay, Holly has two more questions. Is coffee part of no breakfast? And the other question is cream fat also in is cream fat also in coffee? Like, if obviously she means if we add it to the coffee, will
Yeah,
this
yeah,
be
yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah. So black coffee is definitely part of a fast. If you put cream in the coffee, even though, I mean, high fat would be better if you're trying to do ketosis. Coffee does have, I mean, sorry, cream does have a bit of protein. It does have lactose, which is a sugar. Some people can get away with having it and still stay in ketosis. Other people, they won't. And that's where then you go more the route of the bulletproof coffee. So it's just pure fat you're putting into the coffee. Again, depending on one's goals. If it's for energy versus if they want to lose weight, well, then you kind of want your body fat adapted, but burning your body fat. If you give it fat, it's going to burn that first.
Okay, any other questions, everyone? Thank you. Thank you, Holly. Holly saying thank you.
Mm-hmm. The coffee drinkers on this call, I think.
Nicolene,
All the questions were about coffee.
thank you for the
I got my
information.
Starbucks cup. There we go. Cheers.
And coffee is king. Yes, it is. Thank you again all very, very much for taking the time to be on the webinar today. Thank you very much, Dr. Bovay, and we all look forward to seeing you again in the next webinars. This year is wholly dedicated to wellness. And I was saying to Dr. Bovay before that we start the webinar, growth comes only when your cup is full. So this is our way of helping you keep your cup full. Thank you from Avanti Women. Thank you to Dr. Bovay, and thank you to you all guys. And we'll see you next month.